Summer 1943. Across the United States, over 370,000 German prisoners of war stepped into a reality that shattered everything they believed. They had been told America was weak, divided, starving, yet what they found was ice cream served daily, Coca-Cola sold for just 5 cents, and candy bars handed out as casually as bread. Two men raised in scarcity. These weren't just treats, they were revelations. The first fizz of Coca-Cola, the first spoonful of ice cream, the first bite of chocolate, all became unforgettable lessons in democracy's power. What began as amazement would turn into something far greater, a complete transformation of enemy hearts and minds. Before we dive into this incredible true story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and if you love stories of history's hidden truths. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what comes next. The summer of 1943 marked a moment unlike anything the world had ever seen. At Camp Crossville, Tennessee, a captured German soldier stared in wonder at a bottle of Coca-Cola. The dark, fizzing liquid was more than just a drink, it was a symbol of the impossible made real. After years of surviving on hard biscuits and ersatz coffee in the deserts of North Africa, this sweet, carbonated treat was almost magical. Even more astonishing, the guards told him it cost just 5 cents, the same amount American children casually spent from their allowances. That summer, across dozens of American prison camps, more than 370,000 German prisoners of war came face to face with a reality that shattered everything Nazi propaganda had taught them about American weakness. They discovered, in America, where ice cream wasn't a luxury but a routine dessert, where soda was an everyday beverage, and candy bars were so plentiful that guards often handed them out freely. Two men raised in scarcity. These simple foods carried devastating power. They exposed the lies of a regime that glorified suffering as noble sacrifice. In truth, deprivation was not heroism at all, it was needless hardship, exposed by a nation whose factories could pour out sugar, chocolate, and ice cream with relentless abundance. What began as childlike amazement at confections soon became something deeper, a profound psychological transformation that no propaganda campaign could have achieved. When the Axis forces in Tunisia surrendered in May of that year, nearly 250,000 German and Italian soldiers were taken prisoner. These were the same desert veterans who had once pushed the British back to Egypt. Under the command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, they braced themselves for cruelty and starvation at the hands of their captors, because that is what they had been told to expect. Instead, within hours of laying down their arms, they were handed American soldiers who had spent months on paltry portions now found themselves unwrapping crackers, processed cheese, fruit bars, candy, instant coffee, sugar tablets, and cigarettes. What Americans often complained about as bland or uninspiring became, to these men, a feast beyond belief. In the processing camps of North Africa, records revealed that the U.S. Army served pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, and cold milk, foods long absent from German rations. For the prisoners, this was nothing short of a revelation. One officer would later tell the International Red Cross, "We expected to be starved as prisoners. Instead, the Americans fed us better than our own army had." It was in this confusion between what they had been taught and what they now experienced that the first cracks in their worldview appeared. The education in abundance continued at sea. In the summer of 1943, Liberty ships built at record speeds, with some completed in less than 2 days, carried up to 30,000 prisoners each month across the Atlantic. Onboard naval records show that German prisoners received rations equal to, or even better than the ship's crew, averaging 3,500 calories daily. Meals included fresh bread, meat, vegetables, and coffee sweetened with real sugar and milk. Thanks to refrigeration systems standard on American vessels, fresh food lasted the entire journey. Most astonishing of all, multiple logs confirm that ice cream was served in the middle of the ocean. The USS General M.B. Stewart, for example, recorded on July 4th that its ice cream machine had churned out 10 gallons at a time for the prisoners. For men who had not tasted such a dessert since before the war, the experience felt surreal. And when the ships docked at American ports like Norfolk and Newport News, disbelief turned into awe. The Norfolk Naval Base, sprawling across more than 4,000 acres, handled more cargo each day than some German ports managed in an entire week. Prisoners glimpsed shelves stacked high with candy bars from Hershey, Mars, and Nestle, each selling for the same 5 cents charged to any American child. From there, trains carried them inland, not in overcrowded cattle cars as in Europe, but in passenger coaches with dining cars that served hot meals. Every mile of the journey reinforced a single, unavoidable truth. The America they had been told was weak, chaotic, and starving was, in fact, overflowing with power, industry, and comfort. On the trains that carried them inland, German prisoners quickly realized that fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and steaming coffee were not luxuries set out to impress them, but simply standard fare in American rail service. This discovery was only the beginning. Once settled into the vast network of prison camps across the United States, they found themselves housed under conditions that went far beyond the requirements of the Geneva Convention. Camp Crossville in Tennessee, typical of larger facilities, offered electric lights, hot water, flush toilets, and heated barracks comforts that even many civilians in wartime Europe did not enjoy. Yet what struck the prisoners most deeply was not just the infrastructure, but the camp exchanges, the PX stores. These exchanges brimmed with goods, almost unimaginable to men raised in scarcity. Quartermaster records list row upon row of soft drinks, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Royal Crown Cola alongside candy bars, ice cream where refrigeration allowed, cigarettes, fresh fruit, and even beer. Prisoners earned wages for their labor, starting at 80 cents a day and later raised to $1. At 5 cents apiece, a single day's pay could buy 16 candy bars or bottles of Coca-Cola. For men accustomed to ration cards, shortages, and backroom deals for even the smallest treat, this abundance was overwhelming. It was here that Coca-Cola became more than just a beverage. It became a symbol of American democracy. The scale of its production was staggering. Company records reveal that in 1943 alone, more than 5 billion bottles were produced, distributed through a military contract, guaranteeing soldiers the same 5-cent Coke, no matter where they served. To honor that promise, Coca-Cola mobilized a logistics network that stretched across the globe. German prisoners, many of whom had never even heard of the drink before their capture, suddenly found it everywhere, delivered weekly to every camp, stocked in coolers and vending machines across towns, casually consumed by Americans who thought nothing of leaving bottles half-finished. To the technically minded, what amazed them most was not just the availability, but the uniformity. Coca-Cola tasted the same in Maine as it did in Texas, a feat of industrial coordination Germany had never matched. Some camps, like Camp Hearn, in Texas, consumed more than 7,000 bottles a week during the summer of 1943. But the marvels did not stop at soda. Ice cream, long absent from German life, reappeared in abundance. Army records confirm that camps with refrigeration served it regularly in the summer, because military planners considered ice cream essential. For morale, the priority was so high that the U.S. Navy even built specialized ice cream barges to supply the Pacific Fleet. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, prisoners watched in astonishment as Americans celebrated the 4th of July with hand freezers churning out gallons of ice cream made from ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavorings. The casual use of ice in July, cream and sugar for entertainment, signaled values they could scarcely comprehend. By 1944, many camps had electric ice cream machines, producing flavors that surpassed what had been available in Germany. Even before the war, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, butter, pecan. Prisoners could purchase bars, sandwiches, or cups for 10 cents apiece. Larger camps ordered 50 to 100 gallons every week during the summer, turning what had become a vanished European memory into a routine indulgence. Alongside this, the presence of sugar itself carried an almost symbolic weight. In Germany, civilians were rationed a meager allotment, often less than 10 ounces a month. In American camps, sugar sat in bowls on every mess hall table, free for unlimited use. Quartermaster records show deliveries of 100-pound sacks of refined sugar arriving weekly. Camp bakeries used it liberally in cakes, cookies, and pies. Coffee, tea, cereals, and desserts were all sweetened without restriction. One unforgettable moment at Camp Ellisville, Alabama, highlighted the vast gulf between German expectations and American reality. In the sweltering heat of August 1943, several hundred pounds of sugar hardened into unusable blocks. For German soldiers, raised in a culture of scarcity, this would have been salvaged through steaming and recovery. Instead, the American kitchen staff simply discarded the sugar and ordered fresh supplies. To the prisoners working in the kitchen, this was not just waste, it was a shocking demonstration of abundance. So great it bordered on incomprehensible. The revelations continued with chocolate, another symbol of democratic plenty. Despite wartime restrictions, American companies like Hershey, Mars, and Nestle produced millions of bars each month, while the military alone purchased more than 318 million pounds of chocolate during the war. At camp exchanges, prisoners could choose from Hershey bars, ration chocolate, and an array of candy bars, each priced between 5 and 10 cents. What stunned them most was not the availability, but the casual way Americans treated chocolate. As a preference, not a luxury choosing between brands, as though it were no more significant than selecting a loaf of bread. Monthly Red Cross parcels reinforced this lesson, each package containing chocolate or candy bars, instant coffee, cheese, canned meat, crackers, cigarettes, soap, and other comforts that exceeded the basic rations of German civilians back home. Then came Thanksgiving, a holiday foreign to European tradition, but deeply woven into American culture. In November 1943, every prison camp served a full Thanksgiving meal: roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, vegetables, pumpkin pie, coffee, and milk. To provide this feast, not only to American troops, but also to more than 425,000 prisoners of war, demanded organizational brilliance on a national scale. For the Germans, the realization was profound: the same meal served to them was also shared by American soldiers. A deliberate act of equality that clashed directly with the Nazi ideology of racial hierarchy. Christmas deepened that shock. Civilians across the country sent gifts to enemy prisoners: homemade cookies, candy, books, cigarettes, even board games. The American Friends Service Committee distributed 50,000 such packages alone. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, local families brought baked goods to Camp Tonk. In Hearne, Texas, church groups delivered Christmas treats to the men they might have once considered mortal enemies. 2 Germans indoctrinated to expect cruelty. This mercy was bewildering. It suggested that true strength lay not in vengeance, but in generosity, a lesson that lingered long after the war. By 1944, labor shortages drew German prisoners beyond the barbed wire and into America's agricultural heartland. Around 100,000 men worked in orchards, fields, and canneries, witnessing abundance at its source. In Michigan, they harvested cherries destined to become the bright red maraschinos that topped ice cream sundaes. Stunned by the fact that entire orchards produced fruit solely for decoration. At Del Monte canneries, they watched as tons of fruit were rejected simply for size or blemishes. Food that would have been treasured in Germany tossed into bins for animal feed. Records show that about 15% of produce failed to meet American standards, the margin of waste greater than what many German families consumed in a month. Even more astonishing was America's mastery of sugar. Farms in Colorado and Nebraska revealed mechanization on a scale beyond German imagination, with single farms producing more sugar beets than entire German provinces. Combined with cane sugar, America produced about 7 million tons annually, explaining the unending flow of sweetness the prisoners encountered in their daily meals. And perhaps most transformative of all, they saw American children in schools, eating organized hot lunches complete with milk, vegetables, and protein. These early lunch programs, precursors to the National School Lunch Act of 1946, revealed a society that believed in nourishing its young with care and consistency. To German eyes, the sight of children drinking fresh milk daily spoke volumes about the foundation of American strength. Everywhere German prisoners looked, they found proof that American abundance wasn't just a rumor, it was an everyday reality. Many schools provided fresh milk daily, the sheer logistics of delivering it to thousands of children across the nation a feat Germany could never achieve, even for its military. Some cafeterias even sold ice cream as an optional treat. To men who knew German children were going hungry, the sight of American schoolchildren casually buying frozen desserts left a deep mark. When Lorisk prisoners, guarded but permitted to eat in small-town diners, the shock only deepened. These unpretentious restaurants offered menus that would have rivaled elite establishments back in Germany, yet were available to anyone with pocket change. In 1944, a hamburger cost 25 cents, a Coca-Cola 5 cents, a slice of pie 15, an ice cream sundae 25, and a full dinner special between 65 and 75 cents. The equality of it all stunned them. A factory worker and a bank president sat side by side at the counter, served the same meal by the same waitress for the same price. As their exposure widened, American newspapers and magazines confirmed with hard numbers what they had already tasted. By 1944, the United States produced nearly 7 million tons of sugar, more than 380 million pounds of chocolate for the military alone, over 5 billion bottles of Coca-Cola, 500 million gallons of ice cream, and an astounding 119 billion quarts of milk. By comparison, German production lagged pitifully behind. Sugar was rationed to crumbs, chocolate reserved strictly for military use, soft drink production negligible, ice cream non-existent, and milk distribution severely restricted. To the Germans, the realization was devastating. America's wartime output outstripped Germany's peacetime peaks. By late 1944, the irony became almost unbearable. Instead of receiving aid, German prisoners in America were sending food packages home, paid wages for their labor. They bought chocolate bars, canned meat, and instant coffee, then mailed them to families scraping by in a war-torn homeland. Red Cross records confirm that nearly 11 million parcels traveled across the Atlantic from prisoners to their own people. Imagine the blow to Nazi propaganda when German civilians opened boxes filled with American abundance sent by their captive sons and fathers, while they themselves starved in so-called freedom. Even the American concept of rationing drove home the gulf between the two societies. Americans grumbled about a sugar allotment of £2 per person each month, already more than triple what Germans received when supplies existed at all. Meat was rationed at more than £1.50 per week per person, higher than many Germans managed in an entire month. In 1944, despite rationing, Americans consumed 74 pounds of sugar per capita, nearly 10 times the German average. What for Americans was a sacrifice, for Germans would have been unimaginable luxury. The abundance extended far beyond Coca-Cola. German prisoners discovered a dizzying marketplace of soft drinks: Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, Orange Crush, and countless regional brands. Multiple companies competed to fill the same desire, a concept alien to the centralized, tightly controlled German economy. Bottling plants dotted every major city, with standardized, efficient production lines capable of turning out millions of bottles each year. Distribution reached into every small town, gas station, and grocery store, ensuring no American was far from a chilled soda. By the end of the war, soft drink production measured in the billions of bottles annually, dozens for every American citizen. Output from a single industry greater than entire consumer sectors in Germany. Then, in the spring of 1945, came the final, crushing symbol of contrast. As American forces rolled across a collapsing Reich, prisoners in the United States sat in camp theaters and watched newsreels of GIs in uniform, handing out chocolate bars and sticks of chewing gum to ragged German children. It was not just candy being shared, it was the image of a world where generosity, not scarcity, was the mark of strength. The final blow to Nazi ideology came not on the battlefield, but in the simple joy of children. Newsreels showed German boys and girls, their faces hollow from hunger, lighting up as American soldiers handed them candy their own government could no longer provide. The contrast was staggering. American troops advancing with enough sweets to give away freely, while the Reich that had promised triumph had delivered only starvation. Scenes from the liberation of concentration camps carried the same message. US soldiers offering rations to skeletal survivors, showing humanity where the Nazi state had shown only cruelty. Between 1945 and 1946, hundreds of thousands of German prisoners returned to a homeland in ruins. Many carried with them extra weight gained in American captivity, a bitter contrast to families who had grown thinner in so-called freedom. Medical records confirmed what was already plain to see: most prisoners came back healthier than when they had been captured. They returned bearing packages of chocolate, coffee, and canned goods, treasures that became symbols of hope in households where children had nearly forgotten the taste of sweetness. Fathers who had eaten ice cream regularly behind barbed wire now gave their sons and daughters their first Hershey bar in years. These experiences did more than fill stomachs. They reshaped minds. Former prisoners became unexpected champions of the Marshall Plan, telling their countrymen that American prosperity was not built on conquest but on production. They had lived inside a society wealthy enough to waste food while fighting a world war, and they testified that such abundance could be extended even to former enemies. For them, the lesson was clear. Power came not from extraction but from creation. This new mental model helped lay the foundation for West Germany's post-war revival. The economic miracle of the 1950s was partly built on the knowledge prisoners had absorbed in American camps' mass production techniques, distribution systems, and the very idea that luxuries could be made affordable for the common person. They had seen firsthand that standardization ensured quality, efficiency, and scale, that consumer abundance fostered political stability, and that industrial democracy could outproduce authoritarian control. In a way, Coca-Cola and ice cream had taught them more about the future than any political lecture ever could. The evidence is overwhelming. Military quartermaster records, Red Cross reports, corporate production archives, censored letters home, post-war interviews, and academic studies, including Arnold Kramer's pioneering research, confirm the same truth. Food abundance accomplished what propaganda and re-education programs could not. It dismantled the myth of Nazi superiority and replaced it with living proof of American strength. The statistics tell the story with brutal clarity. Between 1943 and 1946, German prisoners in America consumed an average of 3,300 to 3,600 calories daily, enjoyed up to 4 pounds of sugar a month, ate more than 2 pounds of meat each week, and drank a full quart of milk every day. Ice cream appeared regularly in summer. Soft drinks were unlimited at 5 cents a bottle. In the same years, German civilians survived on 12 to 1,500 calories daily, rationed sugar that often amounted to less than 10 ounces a month, barely half a pound of meat weekly when available at all, and milk so scarce that many children went without. Ice cream did not exist. Soft drinks were unheard of. The message could not be dismissed. Enemy prisoners ate better in American camps than free families in the Reich, and the influence endured. Coca-Cola returned to West Germany in 1909, its red and white logo becoming a symbol of alliance and renewal. Ice cream parlors modeled after American soda fountains sprang up in German cities. Candy bars and chewing gum, once wartime miracles, became everyday tokens of recovery. For a generation raised in scarcity, American abundance had rewritten the very meaning of prosperity. When the war ended, many former prisoners carried their camp experiences into peacetime life, often becoming importers of American food products. They understood, better than most, that these goods represented far more than flavor. They symbolized abundance, democracy, and modernity. In the 1950s, when supermarkets first appeared in Germany, it was often these former prisoners who championed the idea, recalling the grocery stores they had seen in America. They knew that true democratic abundance required not just higher production, but entirely new methods of distribution. Interviews and memoirs across decades underscore the same revelation. One former Africa Corps officer admitted in a 1975 interview, "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America. Instead, we found a nation that could give ice cream to its enemies. That's when we realized we had lost more than a war, we had lost our entire worldview." Another veteran, recalling his first sip of Coca-Cola in a documentary from 1980, said, "It was like drinking the future. Sweet, fizzing, completely unnecessary, and available to anyone for a nickel." That drink contained everything Nazi Germany was: an abundant, democratic, joyful. Historians now see this as one of the most remarkable transformations in modern history. Re-education, not through lectures, but through living proof. The program succeeded because it relied on observation rather than indoctrination. Prisoners saw America's industrial might in motion while receiving dignity and sustenance. Food played a crucial role because hunger and satisfaction are universal truths. Every meal underscored American capacity. Every bottle of Coca-Cola testified to the power of standardization and distribution. Every ice cream sundae proved that abundance could be democratic. Even the next generation felt its impact. Children of former prisoners grew up hearing fantastic stories of ice cream served daily and candy bars handed out freely in captivity. As West Germany recovered and American products filled store shelves, they discovered those stories were not exaggerations at all. Many of these children later studied or worked in the United States, drawn by their fathers' tales of impossible plenty, and found the reality matched the memory. Supermarkets overflowing with choices, soda fountains bubbling with sundaes, candy aisles stacked with endless brands. The influence stretched well beyond individuals. West German business culture absorbed lessons about consumer abundance, standardization, and the stability born from democratic markets. The economic miracle of the 1950s wasn't simply about rebuilding factories. It was about creating prosperity for ordinary citizens, and its seeds had been planted in the unlikely soil of American prison camps. Today, the transformation is undeniable. Germany has more than 1,400 McDonald's restaurants. Coca-Cola is everywhere. Ice cream, once a vanished memory, is an everyday treat. What began as disbelief in the camps has become a way of life. Yet the lesson remains as powerful as ever. Ideology can be dismantled, not just with force, but with abundance. Kindness instead of cruelty, demonstration instead of propaganda. The German prisoners who once marveled at Coca-Cola and ice cream learned democracy's ultimate weapon, the capacity to create so much prosperity that it could be shared freely, even with enemies. Their story stands as one of history's most unusual victories, a war partly won through generosity, an ideology undone by ice cream, and a worldview shattered by soft drinks. These men arrived believing in German superiority and American weakness. They left knowing that true strength came from an industrial capacity so vast that even waste was inconsequential, a strength rooted not in conquest, but in creation. America that could hand a 5-cent Coca-Cola to its prisoners revealed a strength that reached far beyond guns and tanks. Even the humble ice cream sundae with its layers of ice cream, syrup, whipped cream, nuts, and a cherry on top became a living metaphor for abundance. Each ingredient alone surpassed anything most Germans could have imagined during the war. Together, they represented a luxury so impossible it seemed almost magical. And yet, in the camps, men who once fought for the Reich could order seconds, while back in Germany, children faced hunger. That stark contrast exposed the totality of Nazi failure. Prisoners never forgot their first taste of democracy in edible form. The fizz of a Coca-Cola bottle, the spoonful of melting ice cream, the sweetness of a Hershey bar. These were sensory revelations more powerful than speeches or arguments. They had not just witnessed freedom, they had tasted it. The transformation was profound and irreversible. Men who had once marched for conquest returned home as unlikely apostles of abundance, carrying with them a new message, that true prosperity was born not of domination, but of freedom. In the end, America's greatest weapon wasn't a bomber or a battleship. It was the astonishing ability to offer kindness in excess, to serve ice cream to enemies, to share chocolate and soda without hesitation. Those bottles of Coca-Cola and bowls of ice cream accomplished what armies alone never could. The complete transformation of enemy hearts and minds. The Germans who had once refused to believe such abundance was real became its loudest witnesses. They carried home the truth that democracy tasted like chocolate and freedom fizzed like carbonation. Their story endures as a reminder that the most decisive victories in history are not always won through destruction, but through demonstration. Not through taking, but through giving. Not through hatred, but through the simple, generous act of serving ice cream to one's enemies on a hot summer day. And so, the men who experienced American abundance as prisoners of war became freedom's most unlikely ambassadors, forever changed by the impossible reality of Coca-Cola and ice cream in the camps of America. In the end, it wasn't bullets or bombs that dismantled the myths of Nazi superiority. It was the simple act of giving ice cream to enemies on a hot summer day. Men who once marched for conquest returned home as apostles of abundance, carrying with them the message that freedom, not conquest, was the true path to prosperity. They became living proof that the sweetest victories are not won through destruction, but through generosity. Their story reminds us that sometimes democracy's greatest strength is not its weapons, but its ability to share abundance even with those who once raised arms against it. If this story moved you, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And remember to subscribe so you can join us for more hidden histories that will change the way you see the world.